Hello, good morning, and welcome to Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Live, and this session looking at redefining sustainable supply chains. We'll discuss putting sustainability at the heart of the rethink and transformation of the supply chain to ensure a greener, socially and environmentally responsible future, geared around waste elimination, CO2 reduction, and the drive towards electrification. So today, it gives me great pleasure to be joined by Heike Schulze, Coordinator for Drive Sustainability at CSR Europe, Welf Schneider, Automotive Aftermarket Supply Chain Management at Robert Bosch, who will be joining us shortly, and Michael Maass, who's Vice President of Sustainability Solutions at Kuehne Nagel, and Juerg Maier, Global Head of QSHE at Kuehne Nagel. So thank you all for joining me and on this fine sunny Tuesday morning where we have a European heat wave, which maybe we'll come back to talk about the effects of climate change on our weather systems and these freak weathers that we're having. But to start off, I wanted to invite Heike to give us an overview. Of course, working for CSR Europe, you're responsible for the Drive Sustainability Initiative and are working with many of the OEMs on helping them to drive sustainability programs. So thanks, Heike, for joining us today. And please give us an overview of how we redefine supply chain in this new reality.
Thank you very much, Neemish. Thank you for having invited me to this session. And when I thought of how to give a good introduction into this session, where we will tackle the broader view as well as very detailed examples of sustainable supply chain measures and management, I was looking at the title of this session a little bit. We called it Redefining Sustainable Supply Chains. And I think I want to mention two aspects of redefining sustainable supply chains. And the first one is that I think to be able to redefine something, you need to know what it is, in fact. So the first topic that I just want to say a few words about is how can you know your supply chain? So to redefine sustainable supply chain management, in fact, you need to know your supply chains. And I think that's what we learned, especially this year, that it is not good when you do not know your supply chains. And it's not only about knowing maybe your direct suppliers or your direct customers. It's about the transparency in supply chains. It's about a transparency also on the needs of supply chain actors to deliver products, to deliver services. And knowing your supply chain is in fact proactive risk management, but also a prerequisite from my point of view to come to sustainable supply chains in the end. And we see that a lot of organizations, companies still struggle with the transparency in their supply chains. So first step is, before you start to redefine, know what you want to redefine. Second step is then, when we know what we want to redefine, how do we do it? And I think also here this year we learned that there might be a benefit to change a little bit our approach towards sustainable supply chains. We see also at CSR Europe that a lot of companies in the past focused on due diligence, focused on coming up with guidelines, for example, for their supply chains, focused on individual product development, which is all good and very necessary. But I think what we see this year, everything is easier and everything is maybe more efficient and everything leads maybe really towards sustainable supply chains in the end if we do it together. Doing it together meaning that we are willing and able to share our experiences, willing and able to share also learnings, and come up with common approaches. common approaches towards processes, towards standards, and so on. And that's what we try to do, for example, because of course I'm representing Drive Sustainability here. As you mentioned, Neemish, in the beginning, an initiative of 11 automotive OEMs that work together towards sustainable supply chains in the automotive industry with the upstream focus. So what we try to do is, and also looking at our development here, of course, we also started from a common definition of guiding principles for actors in the automotive supply chain. We then tackled the due diligence approach that we want to do together. But now in the last month, and I would maybe say in the last 2 years, we the more and more move towards really having impact in supply chains, share it, also involve our supply chain actors, tier ones, but also suppliers further down the supply chains, which leads to my first point. Only when you do this, you really know your supply chains in the end, and only then we can come to really sustainable supply chains. And only if we fit all the, or bring all the initiatives together that we do individually, I think we can tackle the challenges that we have, the upcoming challenges regarding legislation, regarding climate change, and so on. So that is maybe the broad view and the broad statement for the beginning. And I think collaboration is one of the key words for this year. I also want to add, it's not an easy approach. So collaboration needs time, needs also a certain type of attitude to share, maybe also with competitors, and to have different approaches also when you look at purchasing practices or purchasing goals and targets.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Heike. That's a great overview, and I think I agree with you on the as we've had many discussions about this on a collective response to this, right, is what's required. So and we'll of course discuss more about the how we collaborate on these, and of course discuss that the challenges around purchasing as well. So we'll come back to that as part of the Q&A portion that we have with the other panelists as well. So thank you for that. I'd like to get some thoughts now from Welf Schneider from Automotive Supply Chain Management at Bosch. Welf, if we have you there now, we can join you. Or maybe we'll go to we'll switch to Juerg, who of course is from Kuehne Nagel and is of course responsible for some of the broader strategies there at Kuehne Nagel. So Juerg, why don't you give us a little bit of an overview of what sustainability means for you and for Kuehne Nagel?
Hi, Neemish and all. Thank you very much. For Kuehne Nagel, sustainability is not simply a buzzword, and you will also ask yourself why or what is quality doing in such an audience worth it. And we in Kuehne Nagel, quality is for many years one of key aspect to fulfill the requirements of our customers and make sure we execute and perform the way we have agreed. When it comes to the sustainability itself, we see it in a tripartite. It is a part of environment, it is social, and it is governance. More familiar with the ESG topics that needs to be addressed. And Heike already mentioned it before, it needs more than one to tango, because otherwise you're out in the field, nobody hears you. That's not good. We have made a very progressive announcement last year when we said sustainability, in particular for the environment, we want to move ahead. And we have targeted the 2030 neutral carbon program to make sure that scope 1, 2, and 3 are really be achieved. We all know the big UN ambition. And the global sketch usually is up to 2050. I'm not sure how many will still be in business by that time, We see it more drastic. We believe there is also way and room to do so, and we also get more and more feedback from the industry that 2030 is a task that needs to be accomplished, achieved when looking into it. Let me quickly give you a short update. What we have seen lately, we see a lot of increasing regulatory requirements. We had the famous IMO where we had to go in to have a cleaner sea freight and logistics supply chain when it comes to ocean. Michael will probably elaborate on this. There are new regulations up in Europe coming up for overland and road logistics, and somewhat later as well by the not the IATA, the air freight industry to come forward, which we need to comply. And we have seen those elements are key, and we do not want to get pushed into those, but we want to drive and we want to be ahead of it, because just environmental and sustainability in that part is not an easy topic. It needs more than one party asset, and to calculate the CO2 values and what it effectively will bring to reduce before we want to offset is a massive undertaking to understand its topic as such. And for us, it is very important that we have a collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment cycle as well for our industries. What is said, it also confirms more and more we get positive feedback that we are on the right track, and we have a lot of interactions into this.
So that's great. Thank you very much. I think the common thread that we're looking at there is of course working together and collaboration there. Interesting, that we'll hear from Michael shortly, and he'll give us some insights into what's happening on the shipping side of things. So thanks for that overview, Juerg. I'll hand over to Michael. So Michael, thanks for joining us today, and looking forward to hearing about some of the things that you've been working on the shipping side of things.
Thank you very much, Neemish. Very happy to be on this session today, and hello and good morning or good day to all of you. Yes, quickly jumping on what my colleague Juerg has just mentioned. We are in the shipping industry, of course, seeing a lot of developments. Reference was taken to one of the latest IMO decisions from the International Maritime Organization to sharply reduce the footprint of the sulfur emissions in the shipping industry, which has come into place in January 2020. So that was already quite a step forward to bring down these emissions. When it comes to the shipping, the global shipping environment, I think it's quite important to note that we talk here about a real remarkable footprint in the region of approximately 1 billion tons of CO2, of which the container shipping is responsible for approximately 1/4. So roughly still 250 million tons. So this is no doubt quite a remarkable challenge for all of us. And as Juerg has already said, we as Kuehne Nagel have decided to become carbon neutral for our Scope 3 by 2030. And our Scope 3 is, of course, for us the vital portion, presently with a footprint ranging around 80 million tons. As you might know, we handle approximately 5 million TEUs globally, worldwide. So this is already quite a big number within the industry. And I think it is quite important that we are now taking the respective measures to move things forward. I think we will have hopefully the opportunity to work on this later a little bit. So sustainability, to wrap it up, is of course becoming more and more of a vital part in our industry. And fortunately, both the shipping lines and also our carrier partners are fully aware of this and are taking respective actions to face this challenge. That's
great. Thank you very much, Michael. I think it's interesting to see a shipping perspective, how things are going to evolve, right? I think one of the discussions that we had was the lifespan of the assets, right? And of course, the investment required into upgrading them or actually developing and building new ships, right? I think.
Yeah. This is one of the key points actually. What is called the zero emission vessels. This new technology, because that is basically for all of us the only way to come around these huge emissions. We have temporary solutions right now, like the LNG technology, which is being pushed forward by some major container shipping lines already. However, the downside to it is still that only 15% of the CO2 emissions are cut off by this technology. It's still better than nothing. But of course, it is not. It's not a 100% solution to it. So all these new technologies based on hydrogen, ammonia fuel, methanol, and all these things are in the development phase right now. And actually, the only instant solution which we are able to offer to the market, and we as Kuehne Nagel are actually have just finished our program in this regard, is the biofuel option for customers who want to become instantly carbon neutral while transporting their goods. This is actually right now the only way of doing it as an instant solution versus the typical offsetting procedure, which we are all aware of, afforestation and these things, which is basically, if you like to put it this way, just trying to heal the damage which has already been done, whereof the usage of biofuel is like an instant carbon neutrality. And so the other technologies, as mentioned before, are in the development phase. That's the good news. A lot of investment is being done. We are in various initiatives also, but the truth also is that it will take a couple of years until we will be seeing the first zero emission vessels sailing.
Yeah. I think this it's interesting. You say that. I think we're constantly looking at new solutions and new ways of managing these emissions. But I'd like to bring Heike and Juerg back as well, because I think it's an interesting part of the discussion here is looking at how we kind of how we look at the cost side of and the challenges of kind of measuring costs versus innovation and sustainability, right? I think this is something that Heike was talking about in terms of from a purchasing perspective. What's the balance between cost versus sustainability versus innovation, right? So maybe I'll bring that question first to Heike first.
Yeah, I mean, that is maybe another aspect looking at our headline here, redefining sustainable supply chains. Maybe we have to overcome the picture that we have to find a balance between two different topics, but we rather have to bring them together. And that's where we also discussed in our preparatory session the business case. So probably sustainable supply chains can also help to tackle some economic goals, can help to tackle some goals in terms of delivery of products and provide them to the customers in the end, or can also help to find innovative new products because by, for example, saving energy or finding alternative transportation modes that might lead also to new innovative business ideas. So I think for me, and that's what I also personally I'm hoping for, is that we kind of overcome this separation of having, and that's also sometimes defined in companies, organizations, somewhere a sustainability manager who is in a separate office and not closely connected, for example, to purchasing offices. That should be in an ideal world, which for sure will not come tomorrow, but maybe in some years, that should be linked together very closely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is a thought to your remark and question.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much. Before I move on to Juerg, I just want to launch this poll that we have. It's a word cloud poll. So we'll be looking what are the key challenges of implementing sustainability. So I'm just going to go live with that, and while people are responding to that, Juerg, let's have your perspectives on this, right? I think we've talked about some of the things that you're working on as well, right? So,
well, one of the key principles that we have said last year was we formed a number of work streams focusing in the different transport modes for, let's say, new trends, innovative solutions that we may then also bring to the market. And there were a number of great initiatives, but also limitations. I will come to that. But foremost, we got also hindered at the end by the word COVID, because it then really started to focus on what is also key when it comes to sustainability, having operations for our customers, allowing to perform the logistics and the supply chain, to deliver, to make sure the supply chain does not get disrupted. That was one of the prime tasks. But coming back to the innovations and solutions, we have been started, like many others in the industry as well, looking on battery-driven trucks or hybrid trucks, etc., biodiesel, what also Michael mentioned before for sea freight, which has shown also its limitations because it needs a network, it needs partners, it needs fuel station, be it by power or by biodiesel. It needs same sockets that all needs harmonization across the borders, across the industries that can be worked on. What we also have been looking into it were new packaging solutions, stretching foils or corn foils, so to say. I cannot speak too much at the moment, but it looks promising. That we also will be having engaged into the industry and also discussing it with interested partners. That is a solution where we can reduce also the CO2 emissions is part of new pallets. Quite often we are currently using wooden pallets, has a weight issue, has a fumigation topic. How to prevent, how to avoid this also showed us good sustainable topics. However, it is also a topic of what is the quality of it. You also have to be aware of those. Then we also looked into the overland part, because containers, they come to the ports, they have to get to the ports and come from the ports. How we can make that more sustainable in terms of more dynamic, be it defensive driver training, be it side skirts, be it telematics more being introduced. This is a cost element that needs to be looked at, because simply having a telematics on a truck is great, but it needs somebody to understand, to feed it, and to take the inputs out of this data and to make the right conclusions and judgments out of it that will lead to the next stage. So there are a number of innovative topics that currently are going on. And we believe, as usual in a lab, many items might not succeed, but some will succeed. And that needs to be sharpened out. And we probably have 1 or 2 solutions by end of this year, beginning next year, that we can announce.
That's great. Thank you very much. So I think we've had quite a few results from the poll. So let me just get that to work. I think that should be able to see. Hopefully that can that's visible there. But there's some interesting responses there, from collaboration through to cost, and some of the other kind of keywords that we saw there as well. So yeah, that's an interesting poll. We'll be able to share some more of that as well. But yeah, I think coming back to the point there in terms of being able to kind of work with purchasing and your customers as well, right? So are your customers and are the industry coming back to you and saying, okay, well, we want your, from your perspective, from Kuehne Nagel perspective, is it your customers are saying, well, we want your services, but what are your sustainability, what's your sustainability policy, right? So how are you going to help us? Or is it, the OEMs working with their suppliers and in that respect saying, okay, well, we need to have some kind of guidelines here on how we're trying to come together to drive this kind of these kind of sustainability measures, right? Whether it's CO2 reduction or managing workforce in a sustainable way, sourcing of materials. Are you kind of seeing those things, or what are your kind of thoughts on those? So maybe I'll come to you, Heike, first on that, and then we'll follow up.
Well, my answer is, of course, now being in the position of the coordinator of our OEM initiative. So maybe the answer from Kuehne Nagel will cover the other side, because the initiative is the one who's publishing guidelines or has certain expectations towards its suppliers, and we are trying to kind of communicate them, but we're also trying to involve suppliers in what we do. We could probably do more. That's what we also plan for the future. And of course, we cover a broad range, and you just mentioned it, Neemish. I mean, of course, talking about logistics, we always talk a lot about CO2 emissions, about avoiding fuel consumption or whatever, but I think we also have to think of the social aspect. So for example, CSR Europe has another collaborative platform working together with logistics companies on the social conditions for truck drivers in Europe. There are also social conditions when I think of sea freight. So who's working there? What are the conditions? How can you monitor this in a freight supply chain? I think that's also very important to keep in mind. That was actually a little bit a broader answer to your question, but I think the key message is, well, there is a lot of expectations towards suppliers from an OEM perspective and how to tackle those. And it's not only, and that's what I was saying in the beginning, sending out a piece of paper saying, here, this is our code of conduct, please sign. And by the way, this is what we want to spend for your service. I think the future pathway is to say, okay, how can we tackle this together?
Sure. Thank you very much. Juerg, Michael?
From a global perspective, we see a clear trend. Let me call back 2-3 years. We got sustainability was here and there a topic. We got questionnaires, we filled them in, we turned them in, and that was it. Was a good experience, but never ever any feedback. That has clearly changed in the meantime. Our customers in the many verticals now are seeking more information, seeking deeper information, want to understand what, how, when, and why not things can be done. They also seek for clear resolution on their own CO2 emission tracker, because many of the customers do establish an annual report or a sustainability report, or have parts of the emissions also mentioned in the integrated reporting. That is becomes more and more a trigger, because you have the financial report and then you have the non-financial aspects to be considered. That gets increasingly important, because you see what a company does forward-looking. The annual report shows we had a great year, absolutely well done, but you don't know what innovations are in the pipeline. You don't know what trends the company is following, which is when you read carefully through a sustainability report, you start learning that they have interesting projects, be it on HR, social engagement, environment, and new trends in the industry.
Yeah, that's interesting. Michael?
Yeah, to add on what Juerg just said, basically same counts for the transport industry. When we look at on the shipping side, for instance, yes, no doubt, we were all facing kind of setback due to the COVID-19. But the good news is, if I look back at the recent development of the past 1 or 2 months, while COVID-19 is unfortunately not yet over, there is a clear trend towards sustainability and shipping again, because hopefully when this pandemic will finally be over, we still will be facing, of course, the climate challenge. And this is a subject, whether we like it or not, which is here to stay. So there is actually no time to lose on this. So the positive news in this regard surely is that our customers are very much aware of this challenge and start putting this back up on their priority list, on the top of the agenda. And so basically that is, of course, like a prerequisite for us to, start our mission, if I may call it like this, where we actively try to support our customers to not only just measure their emissions, which is for us usually the starting point to see where we come from, but also to proactively search for ways to reduce the emissions on their transport business, and to take like a proactive part in that. And there are fortunately quite some tools available. There is so-called standard industry tools for measuring the emissions across all transport modes, basically, yeah. But also for shipping. This is a little bit, like an average counting of emissions, which is still better than nothing. However, it's not very granular, I must say, yeah. We are very happy that we can offer our customers a more sophisticated Sea Explorer system. That's the name of the product, where we can actually start analyzing the respective emission footprint and proactively offer, for instance, the most eco-friendly service on a specific route from A to B. Yeah? So other than the typical offsetting, which is still a major part, because unfortunately in our industry, as mentioned before, we will not be able to neutralize all the emissions because the technology is not that far yet. But for those which we can analyze, we can achieve already by proactive measures, and I think that's the good news, up to 40 or even almost 50% of the emissions by choosing, if I may say, the right type of service, despite the fact that most of these services are still running on the fossil fuels. So the point basically is that we can offer something already today, despite the fact that the zero emission vessel is not yet available.
No, that's fantastic to see, and great that you're able to, in that position, to be able to also kind of analyze the network in that manner as well, right? I think that's the beauty of utilizing technology development in this as well, right? To be able to analyze the data, to see where those efficiencies can be gained. I think that's maybe that's another part of the conversation is how do you see technology playing a role in this drive as well, right? Are there any specific initiatives that are kind of being looked at in terms of utilizing technology to maybe within the drive sustainability team? Are you looking at kind of data analytics and that side of things? And again, from your side, are you looking and analyzing more data as well? And of course, this all links to kind of reporting back to obviously the customer, and of course the senior management and the potential investors as well, right?
Exactly. We see that also increasingly. We have increasingly contacts with investors on sustainability and the latest development, basically what goes on. And we see an inherent interest also in the compliance when it comes to the UN Global Compact or SDG goals. They want to understand what we do here. When it comes also to new technologies, as you mentioned, like artificial intelligence, this becomes an increasing topic for us. We are working intensively in exploring new ways and things, how, like Michael just outlined, we can make from the standard calculation the correct emission calculations based on many on hundreds of sources to make sure we evaluate the right emissions, be it the weather, be it the speed, be it which type of engine, vessel type, load factors being considered, that at the end has a triggering impact for the customers. Because having a better CO2 calculation that is profoundly and analytically done and also certified by the processes, it helps two ways. It helps reducing the CO2 emissions. Number one, it helps reducing or switching for more renewable energies. And at the end, it also has a money point, because you have less emissions and less dollars and to pay for the emissions that have been calculated. Currently, more or less done on standard tariffs, let me put it that way. And who has the knowledge of this sees quickly that in an industry today, in OEMs easily have 50-60%, if not more, in their logistics spend when it comes to the CO2 footprint, except big manufacturers. Automotives might have a little bit less because they have a huge energy usage for manufacturing their vehicles, but others have quite an impressive footprint that they also should look into it.
Great, thank you very much. And Heike, I know we've only got a few minutes left, 5 minutes left, so maybe just some kind of final comments, and then we can maybe just have some start to wrap things up a little bit.
Yeah, just to answer also to your question about technologies, I think that feeds in my first remark at the beginning of the session. So what I see a lot of automotive companies working on is, for example, getting transparency in supply chains by the help of certain tools, like, for example, the blockchain technology, especially also in raw materials supply chains. So that is for sure something that is currently worked on. I think it is important to keep in mind a blockchain will not save or not change anything, but it helps you to tackle the first topic. And as I mentioned, I think that's very important to know what you are talking about and to know where you want to improve something or change something. And that might be an area where new technologies might help us a lot in the future in terms of transporting informations or providing informations to actors spread all over the world, also in regions with different access to technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the ability to kind of get better visibility of your supply chain. I know we've talked about other areas around this in terms of kind of material sourcing and those kind of things, which again kind of links to has numerous elements to that as well, right? So having greater visibility of that total the overall supply chain, and then I think of course looking from an OEM perspective, their measurements are often measured on the total landed cost as well, right? So how are they kind of measuring it from that perspective, and then of course including in their data and analysis from the service providers as well, right? Starts to build that picture of actually, well, this is what our supply chain actually looks like. And this is where the potential opportunities are, right? So maybe just as a kind of a final kind of note, quick kind of wrap up from each of you. What would you like to see happen in the next year or so? Just a quick headline. Maybe we'll start with you, Michael. What's the headline that you'd like to see in terms of?
Well, basically, I think the most important message for us basically is that the general decision about moving forward on the subject of sustainability in my respect and in regards to transportation on the ocean side. This is really mandatory, especially after this COVID setback. It's good to gain traction again, and I would say because the shipping industry, same as logistics overall, but especially the shipping industry, is of course a very international business. And at a certain point of time, of course, the question will be coming up, what kind of regulations will take effect? That is more easy to handle, of course, on a national basis, but national decisions will not help on the international business of shipping. So I had mentioned earlier this IMO decision about the reduction of the sulfur emissions. When it comes to CO2, it might be a similar scenario because we clearly also need to keep in mind that when you come, for instance, to the hardware providers in the shipping industry, there is only, when we talk about the global container shipping industry, there's only a limited number of shipping lines left. But, you have some European lines, you have some Asian lines, and naturally they might be having different agenda when it comes to environmental issues and sustainability. Yet at the same time, shipping has always been a very competitive environment, and this will not go away despite the sustainability challenge. So I think it will be very important that there is like equal conditions and terms for all those who are in the industry, to make sure that those who are investing heavily into sustainability and eco-friendly solutions will not find themselves in a disadvantageous position versus those who maybe don't do that. So that would be my personal wish, to have that, these equal conditions for the industry. And then I think we can mutually together take the next step forward.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I think we're out of time now. So I'd like to thank you all for being part of the session and part of the event. I hope you'll stay around and enjoy the networking and visit the booths. Of course, Kuehne Nagel are one of our sponsors. So thank you for being there. And of course, you have your e-booth there as well. The next session will start more or less after this one, where we have a intelligence insights looking at battery and electric vehicle supply chains. That's presented by our automotive analyst Daniel Harrison. So he'll be up next. So I'll wish you a farewell now, and hopefully look forward to catching up with you in person soon, or virtually, no doubt, in the near future as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.